Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate it. Give me a moment, make sure we have everything all set here. All right, we got our equipment laid out. This room is a little bit different. I'll explain this in a moment. When we stand here, we stand high, and sometimes we don't always get a feel as to what's going on in the room, so to speak. Where I learned to first teach from on a Sunday morning, the stage was actually below the lowest point in the room. So it was easy on everybody's necks, right? I'm not doing this and everybody else isn't doing that. But it was easier to make a connection. This is a performing arts stage, and if you're coming to see the Meatloaf Experience or whatever you want a little bit of separation from whatever's going on the stage. I say all that to say last week when we started in on this sort of 4 weeks talking about rest, one of the things we wanted to make sure we did was to really connect and make sure everybody felt seen by it. The last thing anybody needs to feel is shame because they are tired. I don't know if that was the case. I don't know if we hit that. And I didn't necessarily sense it. I came away wondering about that. So I just want you to know if last week's vibe just didn't feel right to you, it wasn't what we intended. I particularly think that our world is particularly exhausted in a particularly difficult way. And there's a lot of things outside of our control that are hitting us when it comes to that. And anytime you're in a worship environment, you should be, at minimum, feel seen by God and seen by those who are your family. So my hope is that will be the case throughout the series if it wasn't last week. The heart of the series is a phrase that Jesus offers to everyone, to the religious people, to those who are far from God, to those who are his followers. And he says, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." And like I said, I think that there's no more helpful contemporary phrase that can and should connect to our world right now. I went through reasons on that last week. But he goes on and he says, what I want you to do, he says, I want you to take my yoke upon you, because my yoke is easy, my burden is light. I am gentle and humble of heart. And he uses the metaphor of a yoke. If you're curious, this is a well-used yoke. And the way it works is that there's a hook on either side, and I think this likely hooked on the back of the bridle of some beast of burden, maybe a mule or a horse or something like that. It would hook on the back. It would hook on the back of the second one. And in the middle, this would strap back to the equipment, whether it's the plow or whatever is being used, and the animals would pull together. And what Jesus says is, join him on the yoke. Join him. The lead animal does almost all of the work. The lead animal sets the direction. And so what Jesus is saying is look, grab onto my yoke, learn to go through life allowing me to do the hard work, do the heavy lifting. Learn this way. He didn't say just take my yoke. He said, learn my yoke. That's what I'm hoping we're going to do today. I'm going to pass this around because it's going to be fun for me to watch you guys pass this around the entire room. We got plenty of time. If you want to look at it, I mean, it's a truly used yoke. I think it's pretty cool. It's like real metal. It's real wood. It feels like it's made of made of a baseball bat kind of wood. Anyway, so it's real cool. Take your time with it. And it'll be fun for me to watch that thing make its way around. The story we're going to get into actually follows follows right after Jesus saying, "Come to me and I will give you rest." But before I even read it, I want to give you the big overview. It starts on the Sabbath, which would have been a Friday night to a Saturday night in ancient Jewish cultures, in today's Jewish culture as well. It was on the Sabbath, and the disciples were doing something that they probably had seen Jesus do. They were taking some wheat and they're rubbing it and getting some sort of grain out of it and turning it into a snack. Whatever they qualified as a snack was a very low standard back in the day. That does not sound appetizing to me at all. But they would have known this to be not work on the Sabbath and not allowed. And the only reason they would have done it is that they would have seen Jesus doing it. Well, while they were doing it, the religious leaders saw it, and a series of events happened, and next thing you know, they're trying to kill Jesus. All right? It started with them trying to have a snack, and next thing you know, there are death threats. And at the center of it is the question of how do we get rest? And I actually think that the way we think about rest for ourselves is actually very core to our identity. It's core to our story. And I actually think it can activate real emotion, even anger. And you might feel that as we go through these next few weeks. But the hope is that maybe we restore ourselves. Maybe we see ourselves differently, and on the other side of it, find ourselves thinking differently about who we are and living differently in the way we are able to live in a really chaotic world. All right, so with that going on, let me go ahead and jump right into the passage. We're in Matthew chapter 12. If you have your Bibles, there's Bibles on the card there. You have an app. Many of you have apps on their phones if you want to follow along or stay close to it. Or you can follow me as I read. Well, at that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. They had to be really, really hungry, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, when the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath." He answered, "Haven't you read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and he and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do, but only for the priests. Or haven't you read in the law that the priests on Sabbath duty in the temple desecrate the Sabbath and yet are innocent? I tell you that something greater than the temple is here. If you had known what these words mean, 'I desire mercy, not sacrifice,' you would not have condemned the innocent. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." Going on from that place, he went into their synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Looking for a reason to bring charges against Jesus, they asked him, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" He said to them, "If any of you has a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Therefore, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." Then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." So he stretched it out, and it was completely restored, just as sound as the other. But the Pharisees went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. That's a pretty heavy escalation, right? That's a serious escalation. They're performing something kind of ordinary. And when they called him out, what did Jesus do? He said, "Look, hey, let's go back in our Bible. Remember David?" And he goes right back to a story in 1 Samuel 21. We're going to look at that later this summer, where David and his companions, they're out on the run, and Saul's trying to kill them, and they didn't have anything to eat. And so he went to the priest. He's like, "I need something to eat." And the priest is like, "All we got is the sacred stuff." And he's like, "Can I take that?" And the priest said, "Sure." I mean, why would he hold back food for God's anointed when it was there for them? Later, Jesus goes on to say, you understand in the Sabbath, the priests, they break the rules all the time because what do the priests do on the Sabbath? Well, they work. Why? Because they only work one day a week anyway. They're supposed to do something that day, right? So what are you doing with these rules? You misunderstand who God is. And because they misunderstand who God is, they get really, really upset. So, and they misunderstand who God is, they misunderstand what the Sabbath is. So what I want to do is I want to walk us through what the Sabbath is and what it can mean for us. I'm not going to teach you how to take a day off, but I want to talk about what the Sabbath is and why it's a principle that could shape every single day of our lives, all right? And I'm going to talk about two aspects of the Sabbath, how Jesus can take our drivenness and return to us enjoyment, and how the Sabbath, and secondly, how Jesus takes from us that which we are enslaved to and gives us freedom. All right, so there's two basic central passages on the Sabbath in the Old Testament. There's two times where God teaches the people to celebrate the Sabbath. The first, and it's the two times the Ten Commandments are given. I'm going to read the first time. I want you to listen to the basis for why God calls people to celebrate the Sabbath, because it's going to be distinctive in each time. The first time is in Exodus chapter 20. Here's what Moses is saying to the people. He's going through the Ten Commandments. He gets to the fourth commandment. This is what he says: remember the Sabbath by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son, or your daughter, nor your male or female servant, neither animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the seventh day. Okay, so there's several things about the Sabbath. And this Ten Commandments, so like God doesn't want you to murder. God doesn't want you to commit adultery. These are commandments. He also expects you to have a day where you are not about production. You are not about providing for yourself. You're not about achievement. You are releasing yourselves from all the activity that you are called to. And you are trusting God to control the world. You're trusting God to provide for you. You're trusting God with all of the things that you might need to trust God with. And here's why he tells you to do this. The basis upon which he says, because God did this. And he goes back to the creation. If you remember the creation, the 6 days, and at the end of every day, God says, that was good, that was good, that was good, that was good. And then at the end of the sixth day, he stops and he says, I'm going to take a Sabbath. And he says, this is very good. God was not tired. God was not exhausted. God wasn't alongside everybody else working for the weekend. God took the seventh day to celebrate the work that had been done. And when God offers you and me and the ancient Hebrews and everybody throughout time a Sabbath, it's to celebrate the work that has been done. And now I want you to notice, who is the Sabbath for? It's clearly for all the Hebrew males, right? All the Israelite males get to celebrate the Sabbath, right? The women need to cook food. No, it's for everybody. Everybody gets to have the privilege. The males, the females, the parents, the children, the slaves, and even the foreigners among them get to be treated just like another Israelite citizen. Everybody within the scope of the covenant of God gets to experience the dignity of a day off. And what this means is you get to have a day off whether you had a good week or not. You get to celebrate the work that has been done whether you got a lot done or not. Even if the to-do list is completely unchecked, you get to stop and celebrate, because the Sabbath first and foremost, is about enjoying the work that has been done. Fundamentally, what it means to be human, right from the first chapter of the Bible, is that you are a person who knows how to enjoy the life you have been given. This is fundamental to every human. Every human is called to learn to enjoy their life. And this is even if the house isn't neat, you get to enjoy your life. This isn't for once every box is checked. You are called by God to enjoy the life you have given. This isn't waiting until the house is neat. This isn't waiting until you have enough. This isn't learning to enjoy once you have kids, or when the kids leave, or when she changes, or when I finish this quarter, this financial quarter. You are called to stop all the productivity, all the providing, all the achieving, all of the work, and enjoy. It's fundamental to who you are because you're made in the image of God. Whether you've had a good week or a bad week, the Sabbath is a gift to you. And it's built into who you are, and it's built to how we are made. At some point in a parallel passage in the book of Mark, in the same moment, Jesus would say, look, the Sabbath was not made, you were not made for the Sabbath. You weren't made for the rules. You weren't made for the to-do list. The Sabbath was made for you. It's a gift that you can receive, and you could either receive enjoyment from this world or not. You can either receive the gift of rest and restoration or not. But you weren't made to be a producer. Deep down, you were made to enjoy the work that was done for you or by you, or even if you didn't even produce the work, we get to stop and enjoy all that has been done in this world. Regardless of how you are doing, regardless of how the world is doing. Yes, the political party you don't like is still in power. You still get to be a happy person and enjoy life. You get to enjoy life even regardless of how you think God is doing. Sabbath is simply stepping up and enjoying all that is good in your life. Even in the worst weeks, we can step back and declare something is good and right. We can move towards others and at least enjoy the goodness of their life. I'm going to move into like a unique space. This is for everyone. Imagine somebody who might be severely handicapped and they can never produce. And they can never say, I got this done, therefore I get to rest. They still get to enjoy the work that has been done by everyone. Everyone gets the gift of enjoyment. It's for everyone. And it's fundamental to every aspect of life because you know what God did at the end of every single day of creation? He said, this is good. This is good. This is good. To be like God is to bring a benediction to every aspect of life, to look for the good, to look to enjoy, to look to celebrate, to enjoy the people that are around you, even the annoying ones. You can find ways to enjoy them. Why? Because God made them, and you can learn to enjoy them. If nothing else, the Christian stops and enjoys the work that Jesus has done. Part of worship and why worship is central to the Sabbath is that every single week we stop and we recognize what Jesus has done. I might have had a good week, I might have had a bad week, but nothing is better than what Jesus has done. Whatever I did, it can never compare to what Jesus has done. The difficulty of it is that we do not learn rest from a command. The last thing you want to tell an American is, I command you to rest. Like, oh, yeah, that's the last thing we want to do, right? What did Moses do to teach about rest? he went back to the story of God. The stories are how we build our sense of identity. We're made in the image of God. And my suspicion is when it comes to work and rest, you have a story that shapes the way you approach it. I have a story. The way it worked in my life, I'm going to move this mic up, so it might just get kind of funny. You might have to adjust, guys. The way it works in my life, the way it worked in my life is my first job when I was 15. I started working at the Shop and Bag right off of Hartford Road in Medford. I'm struggling, guys. I'm going to do my best with this mic, but it's kind of getting weird. All right, so I was 15 years old. I was a sophomore, and I became the cart boy. And I would clean the bathrooms. I would push the carts. I'd reload the milk at night. All those sorts. Just sort of the guy who just does the extra stuff at night. Early on, I was almost fired. And I didn't understand exactly what was going on, and I was getting like these passive aggressive comments. And one of the other cart boys came along and he said, "Look, here's the deal. You just need to work faster. You need to work faster. And whenever you're walking across the store, even if you don't know where you're going, just walk fast, because it'll look like you're busy. It'll look like you're doing something." And I said, "Okay." And I made a vow, and the scriptures are really careful, like don't go off making vows. But I made a vow that shaped my life. I said, never am I going to allow anybody to say I don't work hard. I'm never going to at least be perceived as not working hard. And that shaped my life. And so what happened? I got after it, and I started proving myself. Next thing you know, I was in the produce department, and they were letting me do the produce. And one summer, they let me be the manager of the salad bar. I worked hard. I became Lord of the salad bar for one summer, right? And that was my thing, right? Because I proved myself. What story happened in my heart when it comes to work, right? How did that shape who I was in my first job, right? If my boss was going to meet with people at 7 in the morning 3 times a week, I was going to meet people 4 times a week at 7 in the morning, right? And if people said you can't be in ministry, enjoy your family, I was going to get up early and I was going to come home and I was going to prove that you could do those things, right? And my identity was that I work hard. And because of that, that gave me all sorts of entitlements to not work hard when I didn't feel like it, because in my mind, I tell myself I work hard so I can blow off over here if I feel like it, right? I also had all these expectations as to what other people should see of me, what other people should do for me, how I should be respected, how I should be appreciated. Why? Because I work hard, right? And when it came to rest, I didn't know how. And when I hit my walls, because you hit your walls, we have limits. I was living with a false story of what a true human was. And when I ran out of gas, of course, what do? You blame everybody else, right? And what ended up happening is all the horsemen of burnout, right? Resentment, self-pity, victim think. All these things started showing up. But who is the person who is pushing themselves beyond their capacity consistently? It wasn't my bosses. It wasn't my spouse. It was me. Why? Because I had a storyline, and I was living out that storyline. What is your storyline when it comes to rest? For me, I just thought both my hands needed to be on that yoke. Because if I let go of the yoke falls down, nothing happens. And then what happens? Then I get exposed. Next thing you know, if I'm exposed, everybody will see me for who that 15-year-old who thought he was going to lose his job felt like. All that shame will come flooding in. Therefore, I will work hard, and I will at minimum be perceived as a hard worker. But God doesn't want you to live according to the stories of your wounds. God doesn't want you to live according to the stories that the world wants to give you. He has an alternative storyline. And what he says to you and to me, he says, you are made in the image of God, and you have the dignity of being able to enjoy the life you've been given. You are not a victim. You're not a victim to them. You're not a victim to your boss. You're not a victim to your expectations. You're not a victim to your past. You're not a victim to what might happen in the future. You get to enjoy today. You get to enjoy today, and you know what? You get to enjoy tomorrow. Why? Because you're made in the image of God. You were made a long time ago. You were thought of. God specifically thought about who you are. He made you in a specific way. And Jesus wants to replace our victim story with a creation story. We have dignity. The second way the Sabbath is taught in the Old Testament is in the second part of the second time that Moses gives the Ten Commandments. The first time he gives the Ten Commandments is when they come right out of Egypt, and they're on the foot of Mount Sinai, and he's like, all right, this is who God is, and this is why you can rest. Right before, 40 years later, right before they're going to enter into the Promised Land, he gives them the Ten Commandments again, and he says to them, he's like, and he says, here's the deal. Remember the Sabbath, male, female, slave, foreigner, everybody gets it, right? All those things. And when he tells the story around why, listen to the story he tells them. He says, remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. The Sabbath is a demonstration of freedom. It's a demonstration that you are different. See, slaves never get a day off. For hundreds of years, they worked every single day. They worked every single day, and they weren't allowed to not work, right? But if you're going to be part of the people of God, you are going to be different. And the way the Israelites, most significantly than in any other way, are going to demonstrate that they are different than the Gentiles is that they are well rested. How will the Israelites distinguish themselves from every other nation? Every other nation, everybody has to work every single day, right? It's certainly in a harvest and agrarian society, to not work 7 days is economic, foolishness, right? That's literally 1/7 of your productivity. You just give away, right? Yes, they give that away. Why? Because they are not the ultimate providers for their lives. And so the people of Israel, or the people of God, are distinguished by being better rested than anybody else in the world. The way you are called to be different than everyone else is that you are not a slave. You do not have to exhaust yourself. You do not have to bring yourself to the brink of self-pity, victim think, bitterness, and resentment. Why? Because God has allowed you to enjoy this world. You can be different by the way you are well rested. You are not a slave to your boss. You're not a slave to your past. The intentions of the people of God will look different from the rest of the world by the way they rest and they enjoy life. They are not slaves to their harvest. And this is why, and there's a deep distinguishing moment right here. In the middle of it, Jesus is going to look at the Pharisees. He's like, do you even understand what it means when God says, I desire mercy, not sacrifice? And to be honest, I've never really understood what he meant by that for years. Looking back at this passage, I see it. Because this man who is crippled is in their midst, and they're like, well, we can't heal him because that's going to break our rules. And Jesus is like, do you not get it? Do you not understand what the covenant of God is all about? See, in a world of sacrifice, and that's pretty much our standard economy, right? I sacrifice for my boss, and my boss gives me money in return. Sacrifice is all about a transaction. Jesus' sacrifice on the cross is he sacrificed himself on the cross so that we might know forgiveness and freedom from our sins, right? But God moves beyond just a sacrificial transactional world to a world of mercy, right? In a world of mercy, it's about the covenant, that God gives you everything so that you can be all about giving. Mercy is all about moving into this world as somebody who's been given and somebody who wants to give. The spirit of mercy is about, look, I have everything I want. I have a world that I can enjoy. I can enjoy this world. I've been given so much. I want to give to somebody else. And Sabbath is all about celebrating all that I've been given and looking for ways to give more and more to people. And what Jesus says, like in a world, the Pharisees have taken their faith and turned it into one big transaction. And if you're going to live life as a big transaction, you're going to eventually get frustrated because you're going to feel a victim because I sacrificed, I didn't get anything back. You're going to become resentful because you're not getting what you deserve in this world. Sacrifice is all about the entitlements that I get because of what I do, right? And Jesus says, look, get rid of your sacrifices. I don't want your sacrifices. Your sacrifices are disgusting to me because if you don't understand the mercy of God on your life, how are you going to understand anything of who he is? He calls us to a life of mercy and generosity. Of course you're going to do good on the Sabbath. Because if you're not looking to do good on the Sabbath, do you even understand God at all? You are not a slave to the transaction. You're not a slave to the next sacrifice. You're not a slave to your next performance, your next review, to your next achievement. You're not a slave to what this person thinks of you. You're not a slave to what your dad thought of you. You're not a slave to what everybody else is doing on Instagram. You're not a slave to the party you disagree with. You are not a slave to your ideology, your thoughts. You are free to enjoy a God who has given you everything and won't stop giving to you. The work beneath the work you are freed from. Why? Because Jesus checked all the boxes. He checked every single box that matters. And yes, every single Sabbath, every single opportunity you have to rest, you will come to that moment with unchecked boxes. And you have the opportunity in that moment to receive the gift of rest, to receive the life of enjoyment, or be bound to the unchecked boxes inside your heart. And Jesus has come to me. I checked all the boxes. Learn my way. Learn what it means to walk alongside of me. Let me do the heavy lifting. Let me do the pushing. Let me be the one who's the provider. Let me be the hero in your story, and learn from me how to enjoy the life you've been given once again. Obviously, Jesus goes off and shows mercy to the man. And he is healed. Last week, I asked you to kind of notice where you're tired. This week, start asking yourself, what's the story behind my rest? What would it look like for us to tell ourselves a different story about who we are? Jesus says it is finished. Every box has been checked. So go ahead and enjoy. Enjoy a full day. Enjoy not having to perform. Enjoy not having to provide. Enjoy not having to be the hero of every moment. Enjoy never having to be a victim again. You're not a slave. You are free. A way to access this might be to think about, who am I in this story? Maybe you're one of the disciples and you're like, I was just coming to church for a snack, right? And I didn't know it was going to be like this, right? But this sounds great. Maybe you're one of the Pharisees and there's something about this that's kind of eating you and bothering you because you've worked really, really hard. And it feels like maybe I'm taking an entitlement away from you. I know for me, the way I've accessed God's mercy in this story is bringing my shriveled soul. I don't have a shriveled hand, but my work and my victim thing shrivels my soul. And bringing it to Jesus and say, please make it whole again. Where are you in the story? Let's pray. Jesus, we're not just talking about days off and schedules and calendars. We're talking about who you are and who we are. And God, we confess our reactivity. We confess our bitterness. We confess that maybe this doesn't feel right. But we also want to confess that you haven't held anything back. You've created us, and Jesus, we believe that you have done everything to restore us. And so, believing your scriptures, we're going to accept that we are no longer slaves, that we are free. And we also confess that we need help learning to enjoy the life you've given us. Would you give us grace to do that today? In your name we pray.